Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a tribute to Nigel Scott. My name is Nigel Campbell. I'm a director of the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, and tonight we will be celebrating the life and the theatre life of Nigel Scott, who passed away recently. And working alongside me tonight will be Loris Leeson. Hi, Loris. How are you?
Hi, Nigel. I'm good. It's really hard to lose another theatre stalwart, especially one who did as much as Nigel Scott,
Not quite true.
We're
This
airing
year has been
live.
a rough year for the theatre community.
It has been. It definitely has been. But we're here to pay tribute to Nigel as best we can. We're airing live now on Facebook on @IamNdat and @OMGTT. We will read your comments and tributes posted on the Facebook live stream later on in the broadcast. So please post your comments, share your thoughts, recollections, and feelings about Nigel Scott with us. The funeral will be taking place tomorrow, Tuesday, 29th September at 8:45 a.m. And we invite you to join in via YouTube. The link is on the screen and also on the National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago's Facebook page.
Yes, Loris, as you were saying, it's a really sad night here in Trinidad. I've kind of interjected, unfortunately, but 2020 has been a very difficult year for the theatre community. And this latest one is very difficult because Nigel was a colleague as well as he was a friend. And I'd just like to speak on behalf of the board and staff of the Theatre Workshop. First off, of course, I'd like to send sincere condolences to his family, his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and to the wider theatre community here in Trinidad and Tobago. As I said, it's been a difficult year with the passing of a number of stalwarts in the theatre community. But he, on the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, had been a member since the 1960s. His legacy is cemented all the way through in terms of landmark performances. And he worked with the Trinidad Theatre Workshop up to the very end because he had a knack for the business and the business of theatre. And we were part of that with him. And he served us, as I said, all the way to the end until he gave us his announcement. Loris, how are you? Tell me something.
I'm good. As a past president of the National Drama Association, I had a lot of dealings with Nigel because he was such a stalwart and he gave time, he gave money, he gave advice, he just gave. He was a sitting trustee of the National Drama Association and we mourn his death. He was a veteran theatre practitioner. He will be remembered by the executive committee as being committed to the work of the association and its members. He was elected as trustee during the association's revitalization drive, and he always stepped up when called, in spite of his health. Commitment meant something to him, not just for himself, and he encouraged others to value and honor the commitments they had made. He was a great person, one who was knowledgeable about and dedicated to theatre in Trinidad and Tobago. He was valued, respected, and loved. And that extends condolences to Scott's family, Minnie Gopal Chan, his sister Celia Scott, his children, Jason, Dominic, Crystal, and Kimiko, and his 4 grandchildren. We join them in mourning their loss. May he sleep in peace.
May he rest in peace. May he rest in peace. Just want to harken back to something. Back in 1999, Trinidad Theatre Workshop was put together a book. And asked all the legends to contribute some writings. And of course, Nigel wrote some biographies. So throughout the evening, you'll be hearing some words that Nigel wrote himself. And these words are important. These are the words of Nigel Scott. I suppose you can say, mine has been a life in the theatre, with all the complexities of any life, with the pain and loss alongside with the happiness and the rare moments of glory. Loris, tell me about your experiences with Nigel. No?
Well, the rare moments of glory, I think all of us Caribbean creatives could really empathize with that, with the rare moments of glory, because we work so hard. And one of the things I remember about Nigel was meeting him for the first time in I almost sold out my age there, quite a few years ago. And
Yeah.
and he was this,
Time is on your side.
older. It is. He was the one of the older members of the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, and he was sort of a legend. He was this guy, and he had worked with Derek Walcott, and he had done all this stuff, and he'd been to so many countries, and he performed all over the place. And he was like a businessman too. Um, and he was just a constant presence. He was always around. And the great thing about Nigel is that he was accessible. You could easily just go up to him and start a conversation, and he would just be there with you. And it was such a privilege to come back
That's
to
true.
Trinidad Theatre Workshop about 10 years later and work with them as the director of the Theatre and Education program, and have Nigel there again for advice. For, you think I should do it this way or that way? And he'd say, well, what do you think? He was such a good listener and a good advisor. I really enjoyed that about him. And he was funny. He was a really, really funny guy. I'm a comedian, so I really
Hmm.
appreciated that. And
Hmm.
every time I had a conversation with Nigel, I felt seen and I felt respected. And throughout my career, as I've produced different shows and done this and that, I never knew Nigel was there, like at the show, but he would ask me about it after, and I would find out, And for someone who had so many health issues in the last few years of his life, his dedication and his just the way that he turned up, he was one of the people who showed me how to turn up, how to be there for people, because he
Mm.
was there for all of us. And I do appreciate him, and I will miss him.
Yeah, I say. As you talk about the last years, we were at a board meeting and Nigel called us aside and said, I have to tell you all something, because he got this kind of final diagnosis, which, as we all know, it was a final diagnosis. So it was a shock to all of us, but we kind of were prepared. But I, of course, in my brain, started to think about how much know Nigel Scott. Certainly as a colleague on the board, that was since 2013. I'd known about Nigel for many years before that. Right? Just a little history. My mother was part of the original theatre workshop back in 1960 when they were at Little Carib. And she left not too long after, about 1968. But in that time, Nigel joined. But critically, back in 1974, when I was 14 years old, I could tell you my age, I'm not ashamed. I was a 14-year-old, went to Little Carib to see Joke of Seville. And Nigel was playing the role of Don Juan. And the play was about 3 hours long, and I'm 14 years old, but he was magnetic. And I could not stop watching this thing. And of course, for a 14-year-old in Trinidad, what you know is for acting is what you see on television and in the movies. And he was as good as they all were. There was nothing that said that, okay, he's just an actor in a little small company in Port of Spain. Nigel Scott was an actor. And in addition to an actor, he was honest, and he was also able to tell us part of his story. And I was going to continue with some more words from Nigel here. Every production, labor of love, and especially in my case, as a white person in Trinidad, my love was a strange one. What is a white person doing in a black company? That question is always asked. Of course, the question came up during the 1970s. I remember one time after a rehearsal for Othello, again, we ended up at somebody's home. These things, rehearsals and so on, like everything else here, always ends up in of drinking and talking, especially when Derek is running the show. But on that night, the drinking deteriorated into an argument on race. It may even have resulted in some shoving and pushing, but you view that as part of a cultural experience. It was part of growing up and living in Trinidad and Tobago. Invariably, emerging from it, you felt energized. You were stronger from the experience, physically and intellectually, because those were debates of the time and everyone needed to get involved.
is singing calypsos and beating oil drums. But Joe knows the market price of evil. The prices soar when disaster comes. Yet we waste our oil like they waste their youth. Joy, our waist got to shake. And while we fet, forget one truth. The world, my Lord, is a practical place. Your Honor, what is happening in our backyards? This crude tintinnabulation of hollow oil drums, hubs, abandoned car parts, cast off from industry, as you yourselves reject these players, is Alawi music. Is we own thing. We invention. Once our imperialist governors banned the drum. The drum was a magical messenger, a religion, the telegraph of the tribes. Now we would legislate to ban the steel drum? Is that not the support of slavery? And slavery's silence? I mean, judge these faces. Are these not lambs masquerading as wolves?
An excerpt from Steel, written by Nobel laureate the late Derek Walcott, staged in Queen's Hall in 2005. And that stellar cast included Trinidad-born Hollywood actor Leon Morenzi, Brian Greene, the Trinidad-born Paris-based baritone celebrated for his opera roles around the world, and the Caribbean's Queen of Soul, Mavis John, and supporting actors from the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. Our next tribute is written by Brian Greene. And then in Trinidad. I next worked with him on Derek Walcott's Steel, and then finally on Oh Starry, Starry Night in England, St. Lucia, and then finally in Trinidad. He welcomed me at his home during some of these rehearsals, and I learned a lot from him and Minnie that has served me well since then. He had a seriously mischievous smile that I simply adored. Such a naughty little smile on stage and in life. A giant, truly. It is with great sadness that I mourn his passing. A tribute from Brian Greene.
I know Brian. Brian and I actually went to school together. Really, they worked together certainly in that play Oh Starry, Starry Night, both Brian and Nigel. I want to continue, if you don't mind, with some more words from Nigel about his biography as it was. In existence at the time was the Trinidad Dramatic Club, which did classic plays in the Botanical Gardens and Queen's Hall. The first play I did was Othello. Walcott would have reviewed it for The Guardian. Errol Jones was part of the theatre workshop. Walcott had organized at the Little Caribbean those days, and I got an invitation to read. Came in at a point at where they were in the basement theatre. At the time, they were doing plays with no parts for me, like Dream on Monkey Mountain and Swan. But Derek was also writing about the colonial experience. He was writing themes like independence and the receding empire in A Fine Castle and Franklin, etc. And of course, there were parts for me in those plays. So I drifted into the Tuesday and Friday night workshops where we did improvs and readings. One of the first plays we would have done was Pinter's Lover and The Charlatan by Derek himself. Would have been around the same time as well. Then came The Joker of Seville in 1974, which gave me my first leading role, and that catapulted me, as it were.
Other roles that would have followed would be In a Fine Castle as Antoine, funnily enough, what else did I do? In the early days, oh, then there was the Joker. The Joker came in the early 74, I think it was. And that was a part that some people say was written for me. I don't know so much. But certainly Walcott's drawings at the time, because he used to sketch his costumes and his actors moving on stage and so on. And the drawings suggested somebody looked like me. Working with Walcott was, as I remember in the early days, quite a chaotic kind of experience. And in particular, he would spend very long periods of time on one idea. And maybe we would spend a whole rehearsal just working part of a scene. And, but eventually, it all came together. Don't ask me how. Of course, he was flamboyant. He was a stickler for his lines. He wanted you to follow his lines on point. And if you deviated at all, that was a major issue for him. The company of players was amazing. I mean, you had people like Wilbert Holder, Albert Laveau, Stanley Marshall, Errol Jones, Helen Camps for the early period, and more and more. Later on, Wendell Manwaring and Roger Roberts, and but that was in the second generation, so to speak.
Nigel Scott was a brilliant actor, a true gentleman. I call him the last of the Saga Boys, R.L. Sharpman, and a beautiful human being. One of the highlights of my acting career was getting to play the role of Don Juan, which he created many, many moons ago. And I got an opportunity to play in 1994 when it was revived. And what was magical about that production was that Nigel played my father. And that's definitely one of the high points for me. I will always remember that. I admired him on so many fronts. You know, his voice, definitely. He had one of the most beautiful voices, and he used it well. And he had a real rich, authentic Trini accent. And I admired that tremendously. Got the chance to work with him in Starry, Starry Night and be his roommate for a month or so and share the space with him and his lovely wife Minnie, who used to cook for us. And I think I put on a few pounds after that production. Nigel boy, it was a real good one. I am blessed for having known you and worked with you and experienced you as a human being. Rest well.
That was an interview with Nigel Scott during the production of Walcott Dream on Monkey Mountain in 2015, and a tribute from Wendell Manwaring. You know, one of the other areas of life and career where I intersected with Nigel Scott was in doing voiceover work for the radio, for ads and documentaries and stuff like that. And you know, anytime I got to the studio and Nigel was there, I'm like, this is a quality product that I'm doing this voice work for. I need to look and see if I can ask for more money or something. You know? He was the voice of Trinidad and Tobago. He was the voice of so many brands over the years, because just as Wendell said, his voice was rich, authentic, and very, very Trini.
It did stand out, as I said. It captured. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Continue.
Oh, no problem. We have some more words from Nigel. Not in his voice. You just have to take mine for now. When the breakup of the Trinidad Theatre Workshop came in 1977, it was kind of a reprieve for me. I was opening my own business at the time, so it afforded me the opportunity to make some money. I was working, but here was the opportunity to make money for myself. The theater was the first love, but you couldn't make a living from it. So I ran hard with my business.
He was a businessman, and we recognize in Trinidad Theatre Workshop his acumen for business. But he also spoke a kind of truth there that in the 1970s, to be an actor in Trinidad and live off the theater was a very difficult proposition. Possibly in the late 2010s, it became something where you could actually get a job in the theater as it was. But Nigel was a businessman, and his connections, this is Trinidad and Tobago, so connections make a lot of things. And it really was a pleasure as a colleague to get to people and understand something. I just want to give a little synopsis of what he, in terms of a description of Nigel, because as I said, apart from his pursuits in theater, he was a freelance sales and marketing consultant, and he had been in business management for over 45 years, and that experience really showed. He operated his own company, Scott's Trading Limited, for 21 years. His last substantive position was chairman of a medium-sized electronics and appliance company. He credited his success over the years to his fervent passion for delivering excellent customer service. Nigel served as a director on several boards, including CC Electronics, Trinidad Theatre Workshop, of course, the Junior Achievement of Trinidad and Tobago, and Rebirth House. He was also chairman of Hololo Club Investments Limited, an investment company which he formed 22 years ago. Experience, it shows, and theatre experience, and he knows the business of theatre. Loris.
Nigel thought about emigrating at times to pursue acting, but he had Albert Laveau's story as an example. Albert spent several years touring the US as an actor, and when he returned home, they would talk. From those conversations, he reckoned the pain was greater than the pleasure. Albert told him clearly that at any one time there were 17,000 actors in New York, and at any one time only 1,000 would be employed. Being a businessman, he weighed up the possibilities and decided it wasn't worth it. He could be of more use to himself and the country if he stayed here, and I'm grateful for that decision.
I am Nigel Scott from Trinidad. I'm very glad to be here at the Lakeside Theatre. I play the part of Theo Van Gogh, who is the brother of Vincent. My character, Theo Van Gogh, is important in the production in that he is the catalyst for making this happen, this association between two great painters, namely Van Gogh and Gauguin. It is his money and his funding and his inspiration that has brought them together in Arles in 1888. I think the audience will appreciate the story. They will appreciate the drama. It's a very intense piece. There is love, there is fear, there's apprehension, there is challenge, not only for the actors, but also for the audience to understand where this story fits in. Many people will know the end of the story, what happens to Vincent, his brother, and Gauguin. But this particular period in time, where the two actors worked together as a team and developed perhaps some of the most amazing works of art in collaboration with one another, it will capture the imagination of the audience and take them, I think, to another level in their appreciation of theatre as a whole. In terms of the theatre, we have nothing like this in Trinidad and Tobago. We have theatres, yes, but nothing as intimate in the size of 200 to 300 seats. The acoustics are brilliant. The lighting is exceptionally good. It's just a wonderful space to work in. The dressing room accommodation is very good. And the team that we have to work with within the theatre, incomparable.
We're going to take a few moments now and share a tribute from Marcia, Winston, and the Riley family. To Minnie. At this time, it is difficult to say all that is in my heart, but I need to let you know how deeply Nigel's friendship with Uncle Errol was appreciated, especially in Errol's later years. He was one of the few faithful friends who would visit and line with Errol in what they called Parliament. Sure, they discussed matters of state and presided over by the Joy Gold James, whom they named the Speakess, when these weighty matters were lightened by Johnny, who kept walking through the evening. Not to be forgotten is his involvement with Stanley and others in celebrating Errol's 80th and later Stanley's as well, as no doubt many other get togethers included one or you both, including the one you both organized for Errol's 87th birthday at your home in 2010, having him stick the cake with his great niece, Ayodele, not knowing it was to be his last. Nigel's organization skills were legendary, not to mention his fervent passion for and devotion to the theatre workshop in particular. And he would willingly lend his talent to any worthy production, including voicing dramatic productions of the now defunct Schools Broadcasting Unit of the Ministry of Education, allowing children across the nation to hear his well-modulated delivery and clear, articulated speech. In many ways, Nigel reminded me of his father, Stephen, with whom I served as a member of the Peace Center. Soft-spoken when not projecting on stage, kind-hearted to all, decisive when needed, and an overarching, robust sense of humor. He remained faithful and dedicated to his cause, and his cause was theater and the arts. We know that his other area of faithful devotion was in his relationship with you, Minnie. May God give you the strength to bid him adieu, as we know it's a journey we must all take. And in the words of Derek Walcott, and if I die before you, love, the harvest that I reap will be the memory of our love through everlasting sleep. In everlasting sleep, my love, in everlasting sleep. The funeral will
I
be
want to
taking
thank you,
place
Marcia, for
tomorrow.
that. Go ahead.
The funeral will be taking place tomorrow, Tuesday, 29 September at 8:45 a.m. And we invite you to join in via YouTube. The link is on the screen and also on NDAT's Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been an honor co-hosting this tribute.
And I certainly would like to thank you, Loris, and I would like to thank the producers of this tribute who provided videos, and certainly I'd like to thank Marcia Riley for that very touching, and Brian and Wendell and those who gave us tributes. And of course, the National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago for joining us. And I want to thank you, the listeners and viewers of this, for joining us in paying tribute to Nigel here tonight. He will be remembered as a theatre stalwart that he was, and for his dedication and love for his country. Once again, thank you for watching. And Loris, thank you for being here. And goodbye, and bye to everybody here. And we just want to close up with all these brilliant videos that we've been getting with an excerpt from O Starry, Starry Night by Derek Walcott, who brought his play to the Lakeside Theatre in May of 2013. The production also toured in Trinidad and St. Lucia, and it was Nigel's last major role in theatre production, playing Theo Van Gogh. Thank you, Nigel.
Let this baguette represent Goupil's, the gallery where I work, this bread knife, the agent's cut, and this bread loaf, the poor artist, namely Gauguin. Now, normally, I would have cut the poor painter this pathetic slice about here. And the sad wretch would have clutched his wheaten pittance and walked home looking like something by Daubier. Or Millet, with his impecunious slice of baguette. But kindly notice how I edge the knife nearer the middle of the loaf. And that, messieurs, is what has happened increasingly at Goupil's to Monsieur Gauguin's output. Thousands of francs and their growing popularity including the purchase of one painting by none other than Monsieur Degas, who went into raptures over your work, Paul.
Degas bought one of my things?
Vincent, your work is taking time. Be patient, brother. I bought one.